All right, so you're welcome to the Pan-African Women Empowerment Network's mentoring series for its board readiness program OnBoardHer. PAWEN or PAWEN, as you may know it, is a not-for-profit organization that is focused on empowering African women, irrespective of where they're based globally, with the competence, the confidence, and the connections that they need to lead and succeed in business and in careers. We do this through a number of programs. So we focus on programs, conferences, and initiatives. A lot of our programs have been attended by women from over 39 countries across Africa and outside Africa. Till date, we have directly empowered over 4,000 beneficiaries that have gone through our programs. We have different buckets of programs. We have entrepreneurship programs, we have leadership programs, and we have financial inclusion programs. Now, this board mentoring comes under our leadership programs. So on leadership programs, we have two flagship programs. We have our OnBoardHer program, which is our famous board readiness program, which is designed to empower women in the C-suites, women leaders to rise to board roles. The thinking about this is we want to, globally, everyone knows that when it comes to board roles, there is that gender gap. I do not know of any board that you do not have less females than men. Most boards, actually, you just have one, if any, woman on board. So what we're trying to do to address this, and in my experience, I find out that many people say, we cannot find board-ready women. And I'm like, where are you checking? We have so many board-ready women. So one of the things we want to do as PAWEN is to train and groom a lot more board-ready women, and also to serve as a conduit with organizations globally or organizations across Africa who are looking to employ or engage board-ready women. Our second leadership program is the She's with Africa program, which interestingly is currently going on as we speak. This is for women who are aspiring to C-suite roles, and that program has been ongoing. We started, I can't remember, we started in April. Oh, no, we started in May. I can't remember when we started. Yeah, but that is currently going on. They have a session going on right now as I speak, which is just primarily, so the program She's in Africa is primarily for women who are aspiring to C-suite roles. Okay, and our entrepreneurship programs, we have about 3 of them. I would not want to focus on that right now. I think we'll just focus on the leadership program and focus on the mentoring program. Now, this mentoring series, what it is a set of 3 series where we are bringing what I like to tag queens of the boardrooms. We've got 3 fantastic women. I know each of these women, and they are women who have been able to make their mark on the boards that they serve on, just to come in a group mentoring situation. Just to have group mentoring. So the way the sessions will run is it's a Q&A, right? You ask questions. Any question you've had about being on board, being effective on boards, getting your first board role, whatever questions you have about being on boards. We'll be having 3 sessions. This is the first one with Mrs. Tobi Boshoro. But before we read her profile and we bring her up on board, I'd like us to just take a minute and hear from one of our OnBoardHer participants. So like I said, OnBoardHer is our board readiness program, and we've had a couple of participants, graduate from the program over the period. So we have we have quite a number actually here. I mean, I'm seeing quite a number of people. I see Andrea, I see Shola, I see, okay, the names are just flying past. I can't see. I see so many of our participants, but I'd like to invite one who's just going to tell us about her journey in 5 minutes or less. Tell us about her journey with OnBoardHer and what she got out of it. Okay, I'm not sure. Shola Magaji, are you here? I see you actually. I see you. So are you ready to speak?
Yes, I am. Hi, SKP.
All right. Let me. Readiness, can you spotlight her? Thank you. Fantastic. Hi, the beautiful Shola.
Hi, SKP. Fine, fine, SKP. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Those from my cohorts, those from the cohort before me, and those in this present cohort. I was part of the second cohort of OnBoardHer, which happened last year, and it was a very enriching period for me. I had, you know, I had I had attended some sessions where people had spoken about their experience being board members about one or two nonprofits in Nigeria, and I wanted to get more board roles and to learn more about how to be an effective board member and help the organizations that was already serving. So I joined on board her was really, really enlightening and insightful. I think we had sessions on our leadership style, understanding your leadership style. We did the DISC personality test. I must say that's, I think, one of the most accurate personality tests I've ever done. It really captured me. And I always feel like those tests they don't do me justice, right? It's not real life. So I don't always believe what comes out of them. But this, I believe, was the most accurate one I've ever done. It really helped me understand myself a bit more. We talked about corporate governance, which helps us to understand our fiduciary responsibility as board members. As a board member, you have a fiduciary responsibility, and you could actually be sued to court and fined or imprisoned for fraud that happens under your watch. So it's very important we know our role as board members, we know our responsibilities, and we take them very seriously. We talked about technology and innovation. And as a board member, one advantage we have is because we are not in the day-to-day nitty-gritty of the organization, we're able to take a helicopter view and observe gaps and observe opportunities and provide strategic advice to the management team. So that was a very enriching session. And then looking at sustainability and ESG, more and more companies and in more and more jurisdictions, companies are being required to report on ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And learning about that was very, very helpful, also helping us take our organizations to the next level. I must say, I think after attending this session, I would say, funny enough, maybe it's interestingly enough, my takeaway or what I decided after on board her was not to seek too many board positions, really. I just added one more board position. I actually applied. I went through a whole recruitment exercise, and thankfully, with all what I have learned here, I was able to pass through the exercise, and I was appointed to the board of a Women's Global Network for Reproductive Rights Africa. But I think one thing that I decided after was not to seek too many board positions, but actually boards I already serve on. So I decided not to spread myself too thin, not to seek board positions just for the vanity of being on a board, but to actually add real value to the boards I was on, and then just this last one that I joined. So yeah, that's the summary of my journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I like the fact that it placed you in a position whereby you had options, right? So it wasn't like, okay, so from someone who wasn't on a board member to someone who now had options as to board roles to select from, and but you now then chose to focus on one and then add significant value. Because one of the things we always say in at PAWEN is that it's not just for you to be a figurehead on a board. If you are not being effective on that board and you are not contributing to the decision making which a board is tasked with, then the question is what relevance, why should you be on that board? What value add are you giving to that board? And I don't know how many of you have watched the previous video that Innocent shared, where our speaker today talked about how women should not be on boards just to dot the T's and cross the I's and to see where the mistakes are. No, you should be adding value, and that's what OnBoardHer program does, to equip you to be able to add value to the bottom line for the organization. Thank you so much, Shola. Thank you. It's been incredible having you. Thank you so much. And yeah, please don't go stay. And to all the alumni that I see, Ose, Penny, I see all of you, all PAWEN alumni. I see all of you. Thank you. It is time for us to invite our facilitator. Oh, apologies. I don't know what that is. It is time for us to invite our facilitator, the one and only Mrs. Toby Boshoro. Readiness, can you just show her whilst I read her bio? Okay. So whilst we bring her up on board, have you seen our facilitator? Okay, before I start, let me just read her bio very short. She's a seasoned executive and board director of over 20 years of leadership experience in financial services, fintech, and digital innovation. As a former CEO and C-suite leader, she's led large-scale transformation initiatives, built high-performing teams, and driven strategic growth across diverse multi-geography markets. Her expertise spans business transformation, digital banking, customer engagement, and product innovation. Let me talk about product innovation. How many of you know about the Verve card? Raise of hands if you know about the Verve cards. I'm looking at the chat. I'm not going to move. Where's the chat? Okay. Who knows about the Verve card? I want to see it in the chat box. How many people? I want to see. If you don't know, I want to see how many people with the Verve card. After inside, there are only two cards that, especially for Nigerians and those in West Africa, there are only two cards. It's either your InterSwitch card, powered cards, or the Verve card. Now, this is the brain behind the Verve card. Anywhere you see the Verve card, just know that this is the queen that championed it, that made it become effective, and the global card that we have today. I just had to do a sidetrack. Let me continue with her profile. So she's a certified corporate director from the Harvard Business School and a qualified risk director, a non-executive director and chair of the Audit and Risk Committee on the board of 2 financial institutions and a fintech in Asia, East Africa, and West Africa. And she's an IFC World Bank Group and FMO Dutch Entrepreneurial Development Bank nominee director for several organizations. Now, she's also the chairperson of a not-for-profit organization. She brings strong governance experience, serving on multiple corporate and advisory boards, where she provides insight on strategy, risk, ESG, digital transformation. She's a firm believer in the power of inclusive leadership, and she actively champions gender diversity on the boardroom. That's the only reason why she would be here on a Saturday, when I know that I actually had to pull her from something important that she was doing. And so she is a mentor on our PAWEN OnBoardHer program, and she's passionate about preparing women for board service, offering practical guidance rooted in real-world board and executive experience. Her mentorship combines both strategic clarity, governance insights, and a commitment to empowering the next generation of female leaders. Ladies, please, I want to see your virtual applause. If I'm not motivated, I'm not going to allow her to speak. Please, I want to see it. We need to. I'm not seeing the virtual applause, so we are not going to move if I don't see. All right, good afternoon, Ma. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence. It's truly, truly a honor to have you on board. Can you just let's do some opening remarks from you before we dive straight into the questions.
Hello, SKP. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I am looking forward to this conversation. I'm happy that PAWEN has decided it's going to be an interactive one. So I look forward to learning from you as I share my experience as well. Thank you.
All right, so let's dive straight in. And I'm going to just ask you, I'm going to start with the first set of questions. Ladies, please get your questions ready. We will start with the questions that have come in before, and then we'll take live sessions. In taking live sessions, I would encourage you to put on your video and ask questions because we like, if you notice, for our PAWEN alumni, everyone knows it's a video conference. So we want to see your video. We want to see you. So if you would like to be the first set of people that I will ask questions, just raise up your hand and you know how to indicate how to raise up your hand. And then just, I think you press on the react button or so, and then just raise up your hand. And I will take the questions in the order in which I see the hands raised. But let me start with a few questions that have come in beforehand. And let's start with establishing credibility. I mean, you're one woman who has a powerful presence. I mean, anyone who, once you enter a room, everyone knows, yes, someone is here. How do you establish, especially in the first set of boards that you were on, right? How did you establish credibility in your first 90 days as a new board member? Eh, I mean, and yeah, and also in those boards where you were a minority, the only female, and in most times, the only Black female on those boards. How did you establish credibility?
Thank you, SKP. I think that the standard advice that I have been giving and I think works is that because the board cycle is a 3-month cycle, so it means that typically some boards meet every month, depending on the stage of the business. For startup businesses, they meet more often, okay? But for other boards in financial services that are more like mid-tier or, maybe 500 million cap kind of businesses, they meet every quarter. And so if you're not that kind of board, it means that, your first 90 days is within the first quarter, isn't it? And the advice is typically to do a lot more listening on the very first meeting than talking. If you look at that, if you want to look at percentages, I would say 90% of the time, the very first board meeting, you should listen more than talk. If possible, depending on the size of the business, even the second board meeting. And the reason why is the board pack will come with a lot of information, but most times it will not come with the context around the information. So you might see, the P&L, you might see the balance sheet, you might see a project, and you might see the stage at which it is, and you might probably see something that looks like a delay. However, you might not know that there was a reason why it was delayed. So you come in, you start to kind of fire off your gun, and then by the end of the meeting, you find out that you actually put your foot in your mouth because you didn't know the context. So in terms of credibility within the first couple of board meetings, I would say the very first one is good to listen. So you get the context. It also helps you to listen when you also understand the dynamics on the board in terms of the power play. Who is the real power player on this board? Is it the chairman? Is it someone else? Depending on the kind of board you are on, is it a family-owned business? So those things will help you really know how to flow, because on the board, collegiality is critical. And you don't want to create the wrong impression early on. So people are not defensive or they're feeling defensive when it comes to what you and whatever you say. Particularly for someone like me who's always been, like you said, either the only female on the board or the only female and the only Black female on the board. On the board in Asia, I'm the only Black on that board and I'm the only female on that board that is not from the company itself. That's an independent. So it's very important that you get a feel of the board. But that said, achieving credibility on anybody, that the first 90 days or not, is very important. So it's a very important question. And, this is what I will always say. any board that you go on, the only way to show credibility is when you bring value to the board. But each board is unique, and there are some generic skills that are required as a board member, but there are specific skills to that company, to that industry, that will be important to help you show that you are a value creator and you're coming to the board with value. So you've got to know the industry, you've got to know the company, you've got to do your research first, to know the company very well. Or during the onboarding process, you have to learn the company and know it so well, and then understand where there is a gap. On every board, there is always a gap, because everyone will not know everything. So there's always a gap, and you need to recognize that, identify that gap, and see how you can bring value to the company based on that gap that you have recognized. And what I do the first board meeting is, I'm not totally quiet. That's why I said 80% of the time you're quiet. What do? I start with getting a feeler for the board members. During the tea break, during the hangouts, during the board meeting, it's not all board work you discuss. There are other things that happen while you're on the board meeting. So you throw questions. Deliberately, you ask questions that you already know the answer and you're an expert at, that will show your expertise. So you ask a question that's it's called a leading question. You already know where you are headed, and your intention is to show expertise. Your intention is to show value. And you're asking so you are basically showing what you can bring to the table in a subtle manner. And the good thing about such questions is that, because you come in and say, sorry, I just joined the board, but I just help me understand better. So already nobody's defense is up, because you're trying to understand better. And everybody is willing, they're kind enough, they're willing to want to help you understand, because they know you are new. So that way you get them to be willing to help, but at the same time, you're showing them, I'm an expert in this area. I'm an expert in this area, and this is the kind of value I can bring to the table. And the job of any board member is how to ask the right questions, the right type of questions. So very early on, you are showing that I know how to ask the right type of questions, even if it's just one or two, and I know how to get the right kind of answers out. And of course, your body language, your smile, you sound like, I'm not here to fight you, I'm just here, to contribute. So you're already creating that aura. You're friendly, you are senior enough, you are friendly, you understand the business, you are able to contribute value. All of that begins to help them create a picture of who you are. And if you do that, the first board meeting, and then in between the board meetings, the next board meeting, you reach out to one or two colleagues and say, oh, hi, I'm just trying to, I noticed that you asked this question on the board at the last meeting. And I think it's a fantastic question. Is there anything you can tell me more about it? And, before the next board meeting, you already built, some equity as well with other board members. So by the time you're coming for the next board meeting, they already also have an impression that you are someone that likes to, you're supportive, you're collegial, you're a team player. And that's how you begin to build that credibility over time. But credibility is built over time. Same thing with trust. Trust is not built in one day, it's all built over time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, ma'am. So I'll go on to the second question, and this came in from Serin Obuya from Kenya. I don't know if she's on the call. So she says she's a lawyer by profession and working as a consultant within the nonprofit sector. She's worked about 10 years in the nonprofit sector and previously worked with the government and as a legal officer who regulated all the NGOs, both international and national, in Kenya. She's also worked as a researcher in the parliament with National Assembly. So her question is it okay with her background to transition as a board member into organization, as a board member for organizations in the nonprofit sector? Or what would be the best position, or what would be the best course of action in this case? Should she go international? Because she has a lot of experience. Or what would you advise?
I think the very first generic or general advice I would say is follow your passion. Is the NGO work for you, or something you are equally passionate about? Some people work in sectors where they have a passion, while some people work where they just earn, a salary. So if your passion as a person is around, seeing the less privileged being helped and supported, that you already have that, inclined, then I think, first of all, you are passionate about that. I think is the way to go. And then the second thing would be that you also go on board in the line of your expertise. Yes, you're a lawyer, but you have added value, haven't worked in NGOs, worked with NGOs either locally or internationally from Kenya. And so you naturally come with a lot of value. However, the question is, where do you want to, where do you see your skill set creating even higher impact? So you need to kind of narrow that down. Do you see yourself creating more impact in a local NGO? Local NGOs typically don't have as much money as international NGOs. They don't have as wider reach as international NGOs, but they are also more flexible, and they might be more open to direction than international NGOs who are already set and already have where they're going to. So everything has, it's, you need to weigh and say, where do I really want to play? I would always advise that you start from a place where you have a bit more control and social equity. If you're a first timer, it's like saying your first board is the board of Apple. That is huge. You'll be learning in the eye of the public. So any mistakes you make will be blown 10 times than if you learn in a smaller organization where there's less visibility and all of that. So you need to kind of balance that out as well. Start off somewhere where your mistakes, because no one goes into a book perfect. Nobody. Even those that were born into aristocratic families, they also kind of learn, because the market is dynamic. Every board is dynamic. So I would say start off from where you know that maybe it's a smaller NGO. Get yourself together there, and then because you already have the network, you can then scale quickly. But I would say start off from somewhere that is a little smaller compared to international NGOs, because they are more flexible. They'll probably be more accommodating in terms of your ideas and the impact.
Fantastic. And this reminds me of something you said in the earlier session you had, where you said you typically advise to start with non-profits or a small startup, and then you now then start going into small cap, middle cap, and large cap companies, so that by that time you've built your board muscle, as it were, to be able to sit on, the larger boards.
Yeah, and I think it was Shola Mogaji that spoke about the impact of sitting on a big board, and if anything goes wrong, so you need to, because if you have not been a board member before and you go on a big board, you will not be able to sense or see beneath the line, under the surface, what is happening. And with every board, there's a fiduciary duty, and the possibility of anything happening is higher as you go, the bigger board. So I would say start off on a small scale and then kind of move up.
Okay, thanks so much, ma'am. Next question. If you want to ask a question, please raise up your hand. You know how to raise up your hand in Zoom. Please raise up your hand, and then I'll take those questions so that you just start to queue up, and then we can take those questions quickly. Second question is also from Anita Kamakil from Kenya. So she says she's a new entrant in the top management of our organization, and sometimes she feels inadequate when she sits at board meetings. How do you build your confidence? How does she build her confidence to allow her skills and her value to come out and be seen?
I think this is a typical question that a lot of young, well, I wouldn't say just young, any female would feel, because as women, we have a lot of value inside of us. I've found that 9 out of 10 women that you find at any level, they are much more competent than where they are. I found that out. You see a woman who is at a mid-management level, if you check her out properly, except she's lazy intellectually, they are typically more competent than that level they are at. And so my first response to you is to say that I think for you to have gotten to that place where you are sitting at the board meeting, you're already competent. For you to be there at all, you already have some level of competence, and that competence has been recognized by the organization. That's why you are in that meeting. Otherwise, you will not be invited to that meeting. And so my next response will be then, how do you want to show that competence, in that meeting? it's always about value, always. What is value to that board at that time? At that time. As any organization you find that is dynamic, the board might be discussing financial. So for example, there's a cycle, the boards have cycles. End of year is strategy time, is budget time. As you go into the first quarter of the new year, it's really about checking the strategy against actuals. As you go into the mid-year, they are reviewing strategy. So as you sit on the board, what is value to your CEO? What is value to the chairman? What is value on that board that you sit on as part of senior management? And remember, there are some rules in the corporate world where, as you are showing value, you're not making people look bad, but you're going there and showing that this is what I can do, to add to what's already on the board. You're not trying to pull anybody down, but you're trying to show that in addition to what is here, this is what I bring to the table. And you can do that either through the chairman, through the CEO, depending on the kind of hierarchy you have in that organization. But I can tell you, let me give you a quick example. When I was still very young in tech, I was married, I had a very young child, and I couldn't go hanging out with the boys. And I was the only female in a room of 200 men. And they always hung out, they would go to drink, go to smoke, all of those kind of things. And I didn't have that time. Apart from the fact that my faith was a bit on that as well. I didn't just have the time. So half the time I'll find the big decisions outside the office. And then I'm always informed after they made decisions that were not in the office. So what did I do? I became indispensable to the head of the team. I became indispensable to the CEO. I became even to my colleagues, such that when they are in those meetings, those unofficial meetings, they themselves will say, no, let's leave this part for Toby. Because this is the part that Toby, we need to be in this area. We need to do this for us. So they will come back and say, when we're discussing, we agree that this part is what we should read for you because we know that you will do this well. So at the end of the day, I wasn't even there, but there were already people that were standing up for me and speaking because they knew that I had value in a particular area. My CEO at that time when I was at InterSwitch, every September, it will come to me and say, Toby, you have met your target, and I need you to support me in the areas of this, because your other 3 teams have not met their targets yet. So don't stop selling or don't stop bringing money in. I want you to bring more money in so we can make up as a team, not just as your own team. And so when I'm not in those their meetings, when they are doing their parakmo, excuse my Yoruba, this is a Nigerian phrase. When they're doing the bonding things, it's because that kind of value has been created. So I would say to you, in terms of my response, look at the board. Where do they need more value? What can you do better? And say, I want to bring this in addition to what we already have. So it does not look like I'm trying to say someone is not doing their job well. They're saying that we're doing well, but this is what I think I can add to make it faster or better or bigger.
Fantastic. Andrea, please go ahead and ask your question. As usual, we want to see your video. Thank you. Go ahead and ask your question. You're muted. By the way, Andrea is one of our alumni, and should I unveil you here? No, let me not unveil you here. But go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, SKP. Thank you, Toby. Always fantastic and lovely to see you.
Look at
As always. As always, already my notes I've already just been taking. It's already plenty after just how many minutes. So thank you so much for the insights that you have already shared, and I'm even looking forward to the remaining that you will share. Personally, I think for me with boards, it's something that I am thinking in the next maybe 18, I know I'm saying some certain timelines and I'm looking at SKP, but maybe something more of, it's not an immediate thing I'm thinking for myself. So I'm thinking maybe something 18 months thereabout to really start getting active on it. And so I have a few questions, pardon me. The first thing I would say is between the time that, you on average, you say, okay, I want to start this process of getting on the board, and the time you actually get on the board. I know it is individualistic and it all depends, but what do you think in terms of like the average time that it could take you on your first board? Do you want me to say all your questions, or should we do one question at a time? How do you
SKP, what do you think?
Let's do one
Please.
question at a time so that
Okay.
Okay, so according to data and research, it's been said to be 2 years.
Okay. 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 Very
Let
interesting.
let me
a couple
add
are,
to that
are
when she's
shorter than
done.
that.
Mhm.
Some are longer than that. And it also depends
Okay.
on the board you want to go on to. You know,
Okay.
you can get on the board of the school of your nephew in 2 months.
Fair
Most people
enough.
start from there. You can get on the board of your church or your mosque in 3 months. You can get on the board of a startup in 6 months. But if you want to get on the board of a public listed company, in a mid cap or 500, 2 billion cap company, even the recruitment process takes a year.
Okay.
From the beginning of the first conversation till you get on the board, just the recruitment process itself takes about a year. So, depending on the size of the organization and the industry as well, because if you add regulated industries like financial services, then after you have finished the process of getting on the board, you now start the process of approvals from the regulator. That can take between 3 to 6 months. In Nigeria, it took me 2 months, 3 months. In Kenya, it took me 7 months.
Okay.
It also depends on the regulator also as well. So all of that has to be considered. But averagely, 2 years.
Let me just add a little bit. And to see the benefit of a video, I thought it was another Andrea. No, so this Andrea is a member of our faculty, and she's the queen of risk, ESG, and everything. When she's on that level, she's almost like another person. And we recognize the long time that it takes for people to get on board. And that's why with our OnBoardHer program, we try to shorten this, right? So we started by actually placing people on boards after the program, but we stopped that. It wasn't sustainable. We stopped that. So what we do now is that we're partnering with organizations who are coming to meet us to say, we're looking for women who are board ready, right? And we're now then positioning our alumni to say, these alumni are ready. So that's why you typically find that over 60% of our alumni have actually started their first board within 6 months.
It's
So that's what we do to reduce, that gap from 2 years to 6 months.
Okay. Massively helpful. Thank you. The other question that I had, obviously I know, and even with what you're saying in terms of the length of time and all that is involved, it's a lot of work to get on a board. And so for me, I begin to think, okay, Andrea, what is your why? And so it'd be very interesting to hear your story of what is your why of being on a board.
Thank you. So I have a couple. I think the very first one would be that I moved to North America and I have always been very passionate about Africa. I believe that Africa is the next world power kind of continent. And I think that we are the ones that have the solution for Africa. And because we know Africa is very peculiar and unique. If you look at Nigeria, for example, all the economists that helped to turn China around as a Nigerian, one of the economists, oh yes, is a Nigerian. But that economist was not able to do much in Nigeria because Nigeria is a bit unique. And so I find that we are the Africans that can deal, with the issues of Africa as well. So one of the reasons why I have stayed on board in emerging economies is that I believe that's where the difference can be made, because I want to make a difference. And because I looked at my skill set and I know that with my skill set, I can actually make a difference. So I chose, emerging economies. The second why I went on the specific boards I went on is because they are boards that actually speak to the bottom of the pyramid. That's where my passion is. Which is why when one of the answers I gave to the first, one of the questions that came from Kenya is, where is your passion? I've always been passionate about financial inclusion. I believe that, that if we get that lever right as Africa, it will make a huge difference in the lifestyle, in the quality of life, in, everything around what we do in Africa. If we can get financial services or access to credit, access to financial services right, we'll be able to make a huge difference. And so all the organizations I'm in, either it's Fintech or is an MFI or is a bank, there are organizations that actually, make that difference when it comes to helping the ordinary man on the street get in there. And the third, of course, is that I believe that the skill that I have can help leapfrog the organization. So you might not have a passionate, dream like mine, which is around, making a difference in the economy and the polity, but there's a fact that your skills can do much more than where you are. So that's another reason for going on the board. That there is more. I can do more. I can deliver more value. I have my skills. I have skills that can do more than what I'm doing now. Therefore, beyond your work, your salaried work, you want to be able to create value elsewhere as well. And then the fourth reason is that I want to get multiple experiences across different industries. So if I work only where I earn, I would only know where I earn from. But if I stay on the board, I can be on the board of an infrastructure company, can be on the board of a telco company, because my skills are transferable, but at the same time, I'm learning those industries as well, such that at the end of the day, I'm a rounded executive and I'm able to create value anywhere. As long as you throw me in the middle of the ocean, I can create value. Why? Because I've been able to learn across multiple industries.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think I'll stop there with the questions to give room for others. But thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Toby. Okay, so next question is, when joining a startup board as one of the first members of the startup board, what are the fundamentals to ensure are in place to make sure that governance is established and maintained, and there's a clear distinction between executive and non-executive roles?
So with a startup board, that is, okay, understand that a startup board is in transition. So that's the first understanding you got to take to a startup board. And the business itself is at a stage where it's transitioning, depending on the time you join the board. Typically, startups don't have a board at the very beginning, where they are still pulling things together and they're still creating the guardrails and all of those things in the foundation. They typically don't have a board. They are even trying to put together the management team. So that's just at the beginning. But as they begin to evolve, they then need governance. At that time, you need to build the guardrails and build the foundation for where you're going to. So if you join at that point, you've got to come in with this heart of you are more hands-on than the typical board member would be. Yeah. And so two things will be very important. First is that you work with the CEO. I think the first thing I would say around startups is that you need to get the management team to see governance not as a tick the box exercise, but as what is required for them to grow and to grow sustainably. So the first job as a board member on the startup is getting the buy-in of management into governance. That's your first job. Because most CEOs and founders are bogged down with a lot of the everyday operational work that they think governance is just a hassle. And you would understand and sympathize with them because they have so much they have to do. In a startup, one person has 4 or 5 roles, if you remember. You are the CEO, you are the CFO, you are the HR. So there's so much that's going on for the management team that you would expect, and they have so much on their plate. However, that's where you need the buy-in to say this additional role of governance will help you in the long run. There are a lot of organizations that are that were startups the story of Flutterwave, for example, is a public story. So I'm not telling you anything that is not public. They started off as a startup, and then they grew up into a mid-sized company, and they were in a couple of markets. And like 4 years ago, 2021, 2022, they came under serious issues with regulators because of governance. They continued to run as a startup, though they had grown beyond the startup level, and they didn't have the right infrastructure in terms of governance in place. So in Kenya, for example, the Central Bank of Kenya held their monies down. The Central Bank of Ghana held their monies down because they were not able to show that they had proper controls in place. And it took them a 12-month period to be able to turn that around. So as a board member on a startup, you need to begin to think about governance. However, the caveat is that you should not expect governance of an established commercial bank for a small startup of a lender. So you build the structure, but you implement according to stage. So I would say build the structure for a startup, or the right structure for governance. Also, because I said to people, the way to explain is to say, if you are building a skyscraper, you don't wait till you get to the 4th story before you put the right pillars in. You put the pillar in from the very beginning. However, you build according to stage. So I would say put the structure in, but implement according to the stage of the company. You're on mute.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And, I can really relate with the challenges with startups. That was actually the reason why we stopped what we started with, which was matching our alumni with startups, because we realized that a lot of startups took governance as a secondary priority, because really as a startup, your priority is we want to survive, right? So governance wasn't priority. So that's why we now then focused on ensuring that we are now actually recruiting for actually longer term roles. Lucy, you have the floor. Please put on your video, unmute your mic, and ask your question. Lucy was
Hello.
one of our alumni, by the way.
Hi,
Yes. Hello.
Lucy.
Good evening from Accra.
Hi.
Yes. Thank you so much, Madam, for your presentation so far. I've enjoyed every bit of it. I admire the confidence with which you speak and the power in your voice. And
Oh,
I want to find out whether you have had any voice coaching as a board member to speak with such confidence and such precision, because I know we've learned about the power in our voice in a boardroom. So I want to find out if you have had any of such. Thank you so much, and I really enjoy listening to you. Thank you.
thank you, Lucy. I actually haven't been trained, that.
Oh,
However, I have gone through so many roles that required me to speak. I've done a lot of business development, and in my earlier roles, so I've had to engage, and I've had to engage at senior levels as well. But I can tell you that I didn't learn all of this in one day. I fell, I stood up, I made, I made a lot of errors. So over time, I learned how to do that. And you learn how to speak, not just in the formal or in your professional business. You also learn in the other social cycles as well. So I also learned in other social organizations where I had to speak to a crowd of people. So I learned over time, basically.
All right. And
thank you.
also to just add to that, I don't know if it was in your cohort or the cohort afterwards, we've actually added another module on voice coaching, because we realized that beyond the value that you have to give on a board, if you're not able to communicate that value in a way that commands respect, you will typically be, just ignored. And so that's where, excuse me, Toby, you'll know this person, Sean Shobo. So Sean Shobo actually coaches. So there's a module on voice coaching and voice training, how to amplify your voice, how to ensure that you master the different tones. I mean, when it goes into the technicalities, I'm like, on top of this voice. But yes, it helps you to, you then realize, I mean, it was just so magical. In less than, the session is 2 hours. In 2 hours, you could see women who typically were able to say, oh, my voice, I've been able to master my voice in these 2 hours. I'm able to speak more confidently. I'm able to, minimize all the butterflies and ensure that I'm eloquent in my speaking. So I know it may not have been during your cohort, but just speak to Irene, say she'll be able to send you details of that session so that you can actually just watch. I mean, for
Yeah,
all alumni.
I took part in it.
Okay, yes,
I
exactly.
took part in it, and I've seen a webinar coming up as well.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
fantastic.
And I can say to you, Seun Shobo is good. It's good.
We bring the best. I dare say we always bring the best. All right, so I'm going on to the next question. Thank you, Lucy. If you want to ask a question, please don't forget to raise up your hand.
There's a Rosemary.
Oh, okay, we have Rosemary. Okay, all right, Rosemary, please go ahead.
But, thank you, ladies, and greetings from Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay, so the Kenyans are winning. It's okay.
Yes, we are all over. And we are grateful. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for the great job that you're doing. I've been looking around quite a bit for a relevant and practical on board for ladies, and glad I bumped into PAWEN. I also happened to look at one of the videos done last year by Madam Boshoro, and I found it quite interesting and quite insightful. So that's partly why I needed to be here, just to keep following up and see what you have on board. But that aside, I think not really a concern, or maybe just some sort of insights I'm looking at. I've sat in a board before. I'm currently in a board of a school, I would say. But I think the most interesting thing is because the first time I was picked in that board, I didn't go looking to sit in a board. I think I was just picked because I'm active within the community or something like that. And also in another startup that deals with some sort of an NGO that deals with education and a bit of health. Also because I had assisted them to do some bit of paperwork and policies here and there. So I wouldn't say I at first I was very productive, or I brought so much on on the table. Which felt a bit off, because then you feel like I was picked for a reason, but I'm not being as useful, or I'm here just to balance gender, because I think in the NGO side, I was the only lady on the table, and kind of felt awkward for a bit. Of course, with time I've learned as I transitioned from healthcare. I do also training in leadership and strategy. So I got to build myself quite a bit. So I must say maybe in the last 3-4 years, I've brought something on the table. But as at this point, what am I looking at? I'm looking to scale up a bit, looking at it from the perspective that I was had picked literally, not like I went to look for something. Had picked, but I feel like I've learned and it's something I enjoy, and I would want to bring that value now to a higher level of an organization. So I think what I'm looking at is how does that growth journey look like? Coming from a community kind of institution or organization where you are given a seat on the table because of your proactiveness in the things that happen, or because they needed agenda on the table, but now you want to be able to sit around a bigger table, if I may put it that way. How does that transition look like? I think that's what I'm looking to learn in this session and any other sessions that PAWEN might have. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that, let me break it down to the simplest level. The most important thing on the board is your ability to achieve consensus. They give it a very big word, collegiality, whatever it is, but the most important thing, skill you need on the board is your ability to achieve consensus, which is your ability to get other members of the board who are equals with you or even maybe higher than you. You're able to get them to agree to your viewpoint. You are able to work with them to deliver an agreed point or result. So I would say that you already have the basic skill. Either you were handpicked to go on the board or you didn't. As long as you were able to sit on that board and work with other people. And I know that it might sound cheeky when I'm about to say, but I find that school boards are one of the most trying boards, because you have mothers and fathers who are very passionate. There's a lot of emotion involved. Not everyone is as removed in terms of emotion when it comes to children. So when you're on a school board and you're able to manage all the stakeholders, the parents, the mothers, the teachers, you're actually learning board 101 in a very unusual environment. So I think you have the basic skill set. The other thing then you then need to sit back and ask yourself, where you're going to, what do you need there? You have the basic skill set, so you can, with what you have done, the 2 places you have been, the 2 boards, you can put that on your resume and say, actually, I have board experience, because you do have board experience. The next thing is to say, what would that industry need, or what would that board require? That would be a differentiator for you, because the minute you come into the board level, it's a profession. There are a lot of people like you who have that ability. So what do I use to differentiate myself? If I want to go into healthcare, is it health tech I want to go into, or hospitals, or which part of healthcare do I want to go into, and then what is required in that that part of healthcare, and then you then say to yourself, at what level do I want to go in? Do I want to go in at a small hospital that has only 3 branches, or do I want to go in at a global medical brand, or do I want to go into a health tech? So you then say, what do you need it for? So you need to do that audit. When you then find out what is needed there, you then check yourself and say, do I have those things? If you don't have those skills, you have 70% of those skills, then you can take the plunge and say, let's go. Because most men, unlike us, we want to have 100% of the skills. Men have 50% and they're willing to take a chance. So for your comfort level, you need to have up to 60% of the skill set. I think you should take a chance because you will learn. There's no board you go to that is not unique that you don't have to learn. If you are a banker, you have been a banker forever. You go onto a bank board, you find that how people do things on that board may be different from how you did things in your own bank. So even if you have been an expert forever, you get there, you find that you still have to learn. So there's always learning to be done. So I would say, first do an audit. What does this level require? What do I have to operate at that level? Do I have, don't I have? If I don't have, what are those things I don't have? And then how do I get those things? And then you give yourself a timeline, knowing that the process typically takes between 6 to 12 months or 18 months or 2 years. When do I want to do those, get those skills so that I can be ready in 6 months or I can be ready in 8 months? So fantastic things that are here. PAWEN can help you in those areas where you have skill gaps. And if there's anywhere outside PAWEN too, they would recommend to you where they think you can get some of those other skills that you might not find in PAWEN. So I think you're in the right place. But you just need to do that work of knowing what is needed at the level you are going to, and then come back to the experts here to say, I find these are the skills that are required where I want to be, and this is what I have as a skill gap, and this is how I want to plug it, and within this timeline. And then PAWEN would help you either with what they have in place or where else they think you can get that. Because I know that PAWEN has a lot of industry experts that they work with as well that can send you in the right direction.
Thank you very much.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much. Toby, I want to put you on the spot. And so let me know if you want me to pause the recording as you answer or not. All right, now this is on managing perceptions as a woman on the board. Can you share a moment with us or a time when you faced resistance or skepticism because you're a woman in the boardroom? How did you manage this perception while still staying true to your leadership style?
So on the board, on one of the boards, I'm not going to say particular board, but one of the boards I sit on, I'm the only African, I'm the only woman, and it's a board where there's a lot going on in terms of the amount of work and all of that. And as you would know, typically at the mid-sized level, they're not very particular about governance. It became a hassle for them. They were trying to achieve profitability, and they felt that always pushing for governance was going to hinder their ability to achieve profitability. So I came across, I perceived afterwards that I came across as a bit heavy-handed, and they felt I came across superior. Okay, and I always take feedback because I know that as a Nigerian and a female Nigerian who has worked in a male-dominated environment, I already have my battle scars. So I kind of already come, I come to the board very confident and maybe even unconsciously battle ready. You know what I mean? So when I got that feedback, I took a step back. And I said to myself, what's my aim here? What's my goal? My goal is to support management to achieve their goals. I'm not here to flex. Flex, I don't know if it's a global word. I'm not here to throw my weight around. I have no value. There's no value for me to throw my weight around. I'm not here to show that I'm superior to anyone. I'm here to create value and to support management to achieve their goals.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. I think my next question is coming from Penny. Penny is she's an alumni of our other leadership program, which is the She Street Africa program. Penny, I'm going to forgive you in this instance. You should typically put on your video and ask this question, but I'll forgive you. All right. So she says, how do you manage being a first-time board member? In a small company, there's a big difference from where you typically have experience in, and at the same time, work-life balance, juggling this with being a mother, being a wife, and also trying to deliver on the board as the only woman among men. I mean, this is the phase in which she is in. and she's asking for advice. How do you think she can navigate this?
Penny, I think that the first thing to say is that you're only there because they think there's value you're going to add. So you've got to kind of understand that the only reason why I'm here is because there's value that they perceive that I have, that that I can add to the company. So you must go in with that understanding. Yeah. The second thing is the startup. Startups are in transition, so there's a lot of fluidity. The problem today is a different problem tomorrow. The headache today is a different headache tomorrow, and they're constantly changing. So you must be willing and flexible to change. Because you come in, it's something else, there's not as structured or, as other organizations. So when you come in, understand that, you're coming into an environment where there's not a lot of structure, there's a lot of flexibility and fluidity, and they're learning. They're learning you as you are learning them. There's a lot of learning going on. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that, yes, it's not your typical environment where you have expertise, but because they already think you have value, you need to find out, why did you bring me on? Or what can I do to make your lives better or easier? And that thing is something that you begin to do on that board as a board member, because the only reason why you are there is because they think there's value. Even if all they need you for is your connection to the central bank governor of your country. Yeah, because at times they bring you on because of your network. At the board level, your network is one of the most important things they require from you, apart from, because the truth is that if you're an accountant, the accountant in the organization already has accounting skills. If you are, they already have management members that already have the skill sets that you have. Now, what they need is that experience and the exposure, and of course, your network. So there's something that you can bring as value. Then in terms of juggling stuff, you kind of need to prioritize. Is the board stream important to you? Is it your passion? Is it where you think you can create impact and influence, the outcomes? Then you need to make space for it. And what I had to do, this is my personal experience. I'm not saying it's the way you should go, and I'm not judging anyone in any way with this comment, what I'm about to say. I looked at my lifestyle and I decided that what I needed to cut down on so I could give more focus to my board was social, activities. So I reduced the number of weddings I went for. I reduced the number of parties I attended. That for me was what I had to do so that my family will not suffer. Because if I didn't do that, then my family will suffer. My family time would suffer. So I had to prioritize my family time, but then I reduced the number of weddings, the number of parties, because I needed to, whatever time I spent on my board, I made up for my family on those weekends. And that way I was able to kind of balance marriage, my spouse, my children, my work, and then board.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Mary Musa, you have the floor. Please put up your video, unmute your mic, and then ask your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Say, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Mary Musa, yes, from Kenya. I think you say Kenyan
Kenyans again. Okay, that's fine. Please go.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be here and I'm glad to be on this platform. I think my question goes to Oluwatobi, and so far, thank you for sharing your wealth experience in different fields. But I would like to ask, how did you position yourself maybe for the first time board experience? And what can you maybe advise someone or rather recommend for someone in that state? I'm not yet there, but it's a journey, it's a path I would want to take. So how can someone position themselves for that field or that journey? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I think I've been very lucky, and I use that word, I've been lucky and favored because I worked in financial technology for the past 20 plus years. And financial technology became very important to a lot of the organizations in financial services. In the last 10, 15 years, it's been critical. It's been a major skill set that is required to drive growth using technology to drive growth became very important in financial services. And I'm an expert in that. So I have had that unique opportunity to be able to get on board because of that skill. So my very first board I got from my network. So I went to Harvard Business School to learn how to become a board member, basically. So I went to Harvard Business when I was certified as a board member. And at that point, I met a lot of other women. And then one of the women, I just put my resume together and they said, okay, give me your resume. And that person sent my resume to a particular organization. And a year after, that organization had invested in a bank and they needed to turn that bank around using technology. So they went into their database and looked for, people that had such skills. And my resume came up and I was, asked to join that board. So for me, it's because I was on that track at that time. And that's how I got on that board, because of my specific skill set that was needed in the industry where I was, I still am. But if you take that experience into today, what am I doing today? Now, today am going, I was talking to SKP some days ago. I spoke to, in the last 3 months, I've spoken to about 7 to 8 recruitment agencies. What was I trying to understand? I asked them to understand the required skill set in Africa and developing economies for a CEO, for a director going forward. Because I understood that there's always a shift, like every 5 to 10 years. The skill that was important 5 years ago will still be important, but not as critical. And for you to stand out, you need to have a skill that stands you out, that is critical at that time. So marketing is something that everybody still needs, but it's not critical. It's not, what is critical at this time? So I began to ask them, in Africa, what is the critical skill set now that CEOs are looking for, that investors are looking for, that multilateral organizations are looking for in their investing companies? And then what am I doing? I've checked myself to say, what do I have? What don't I have? And on that basis, if there's anything I don't have, then I go back to school or I go back to organizations like PAWEN to get that skill in and position myself. So what I would say to you is that you're not there yet, but it's good that you're talking about this now. So you're checking yourself to say, the next 2 years, I want to be on the board. And I want to be on the board in, for example, financial services, in fintech, in financial services. So you've got to be very specific. What is that thing that you're passionate about? If it's fintech in financial services, you say to yourself, what do they need on those kind of boards? And what do I have? And what don't I have? And then give yourself a timeline to say, for the next 2 years, I'm going to get the skills required. Not just the skills, but remember, like I said to you, even the network as well. So you need to plug into the PAWEN network. You need to plug into your local network. You need to plug into your industry network. You'll be deliberate about attending seminars, forums that showcase you such that you are top of mind. Yeah. And of course, I'm not a social media person. And some people are very good at it. You're on LinkedIn, you're on social media, you're putting out that information as you're putting yourself out as a top leader in your sector. Okay. So you're doing all of these things to create visibility ahead of time, such that when it's time for you to then start your board journey, you already have created some equity around your brand as a possible candidate for a board. And then you begin to tap into your network. And then you start telling people, I'm open to this. Most people start off with an advisory board or an NGO board. You go after such things. You maybe you have children, you go to their school and start off to say, I can help you, on this board. And that's where you get your experience from before you go to a paid board. Because some boards are not paid, some boards are paid. But if they pay you on a board, you should expect that they will ask more of you. So you need to prepare for that as well. That would be my response.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that is very well answered. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just want to double in on the power of networks, right? Most boards, because of the precarious situation, the personal brand of any board member adds to the organization. There are a lot of risks associated with it. So you typically find that most boards want to hire people they know and trust, right? They like to hire within networks. So you also want to then invest in building quality relationships, but also showcasing your personal brand. Because if people within your network cannot vouch for you, cannot speak of you, cannot recommend you for these roles, it limits the nets that you have, to put yourself out there. So networks are really critical. All right. So if you want to ask a question, please raise up your hand, but then I'm going to go on to the next question that I have here. Now, the first time I met Mrs. Boshoro was at a time when she was talking about office politics. This is what this is one thing, and then she's also facilitated a session on office politics because she's the queen. When you listen to a session on office politics, it just changes your mindset completely. But I understand that office politics in a corporate setting and in the C-suite is totally different from office politics on the board. So how have you navigated board politics and relationships, especially on boards where it can be quite political, right? Because of the different vested interests that are represented on the board. And what would you say are effective ways to build relationships and influence behind the scenes without looking transactional?
I think that, everyone can recognize a genuine and sincere person. So the first thing is you've got to be your authentic self. You've got to be your authentic self. You come to the board, people can because they're senior people. They've gone through politics themselves. They've seen every shade of politics. For them to be on the board, they've seen it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And they can see through you in the sense that if you are pretending or pretentious, and the minute people think you are pretentious, already you have lost credibility with them. So the first thing you need to do when you come on the board is come as your authentic self. People can sense that you are genuine and you are sincere. So that is very important. And how you do that is let people know ahead of time your principles, who you are, the things that you believe in, let it be clear that these are the things that are important to me. That first. The second thing is, when you engage, your conversation with any board member, like it is with anyone, I always say to people that in the corporate setting, every time you talk to a senior person, I hope you know that you are going through a performance management session every time, because they leave you with an impression. They always, anytime anybody senior is talking to you, after that conversation, they create an impression of you in their minds. Good, bad, or ugly, but an impression is always created, and that impression stays. Perception is very important at the body level. How do people perceive you? It might not even be the real thing, but that's the perception. So you've got to be very clear in terms of your body language, your words. You've got to be clear, even when you are speaking offline, so to speak. People say there's offline. There's no offline in the boardroom. Because at the time you're discussing offline with that person already has an impression, and that person will bring that conversation or that impression to the board meeting the next time. So anytime you're engaging any board member, be aware that is board dynamics going on at any time, either offline or online. Okay. And when you are speaking to a board member, either you're joking or you will deliberately creating or re-emphasizing the impression you want them to have of you. So remember that every time you're talking to another board member, remember that you're either trying to create a new impression or you are re-emphasizing an impression you want them to have of you every time. And when you come in as your authentic self, you are sincere when you're having your conversation, you are clear in your communication, and you understand that this conversation is going to, because I tell people, there's nothing that you say is private that is private on your board. Don't forget that as well. You meet your board member and say, oh, this is a private conversation. Please don't share with anyone else. Yes, but yes, it will come out. It might not come out where you are there, but it will come out somewhere. So be aware that whatever conversation you're having with another board member, it's not your husband or your son or your daughter or your sister. Those are the kind of relationships you can have a conversation and you think will remain private. Any other one that has to do with the board member, don't expect any privacy to come out sometime. Okay, so that would be my own explanation to say, when you have those conversations, be sincere, be authentic, make sure that you pass across what you're trying to say, and there's no ambiguity. And, of course, you are respectful at all times, because the politics will always be there. You've got to take a stand. And that's what I do. When I'm in any place, my principles, what I stand for. And that when you're talking to Toby, there's no other, what you get is what you see is what you get. She doesn't have three faces. She doesn't tell you A, and then behind you hear B, and then you hear C somewhere else. So when people know you over time that way, even when what you're saying is a hard conversation, they know that this is exactly what it is. There's nothing more. She's just here. This question needs to be held, and there's nothing personal about it, and she just wants to be able to pass things across. That way, that for me are the fundamentals of politics on the board. Because on the board, unlike on the corporate setting, it is about collegiality and working together. If you cannot work together with your other board colleagues, they will vote you out. So it's not like on the corporate where you are, where is the dog eat dog kind of thing. No, this is the board, and the politics on the board is collegiality, the ability to create consensus and to get buy-in. So you've got to be able to do that. And if you can do that, you can choose deliberately, like I do, to step away a bit from the politics of, of whatever politics that is on the board when people are speaking to power, because on every board there are people that carry power, and some people deliberately speak to power. And I choose not to do that. But I'm not naive, and I'm not unaware. So when you don't speak to power, then you come with value and you work with other members as well to achieve your goal.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. So now let's talk about building a public profile. We all know that we live in a digital era, and your digital presence speaks a lot to who you are, how you're perceived, and really what opportunities will come your way. So can you share with us some specific things that you have done or that you've seen other people do well that enhances external board positioning, right? So that you're considered for other board roles. I mean, just pretty much, how do you position in the digital space to ensure that you're considered for a board role?
I will start with what I've seen other people do well, because like I said earlier, I'm not a very big social media person, but I've seen that a lot of my colleagues have become known as thought leaders in specific areas. They are known as thought leaders when it comes to risk, when it comes to governance, when it comes to ESG. You've got to show expertise and also breadth. So yes, I'm an expert in ABC area, but I also have breadth across multiple geographies, or I have breadth across multiple industries. So people would like to have a board member. If you look at, for example, for the ladies are Nigerians here, if you look at Madam Woshika, she's been on the board of an FMCG, board of a tech, board of a bank. So she has breadth across multiple industries. So you get her on your board, she brings that wealth of experience from different industries to your board. And she brings also the network as well that comes with having that kind of breadth, on the board. And so you've got a position. And for her, that is the positioning. She's got breadth, not only in terms of knowledge, but she's got breadth in terms of network as well. And then you are expert in a particular area. And you've got to let that be clear, to say that I'm an expert, I'm a thought leader in this area. I also have breadth, across different industries. What have I done? I don't do a lot of postings and stuff on social media, but one of the things I make sure I do, that if you get to my page, you will get to know a lot about what I have done. So you must do your own homework well, making sure that every information you put out there is driving that goal, that you want to achieve. Make sure you have up-to-date information on social media about yourself. Make sure that you are constantly updating and reviewing what you have online. Make sure that you are checking, like somebody said to me, optimizing your social media handles or your LinkedIn profile. And then, like I've said for a couple of times in this session, that you're always auditing yourself and where you are and where you want to be. And then asking yourself what are the skills so that you are repositioning yourself online all the time. You are positioning, because if you have been told, for example, that going forward in developing economies, they need board members who have a set of skills A, B, C. And what you have is C, E, D. What do you do? When you get the skills, you have to go back online and reposition. And at times I've found a lot of the things we think we don't know, we already know, or we already have those skills. So for example, I was talking to a senior colleague or a mentor, and I was saying, no, I don't have infrastructure experience. However, I have experience as a client to infrastructure companies. I said, no, that's wrong. You actually have experience in infrastructure from a customer view. And I did it, so I never put it online that I had such experience because I didn't think that was experience. And she said to me, you have the most relevant experience for an infrastructure board because they already know as an operator what they do in infrastructure, but they don't know what their clients need as much as you, because you have been a client. So you actually come with the kind of skill they require on the board. So positioning, is always evolving, and you're always repositioning online, making sure that you have most up-to-date information on your social media handles. That is what I do. I don't do a lot of postings as well, but that has to do with my temperament and my personality. It's not that it's wrong to do. It's just that I'm not that kind of person.
Fantastic. And one of the things I always say with posting, and I think I should just mention it here, especially on LinkedIn. I mean, I think if you're positioning for a board role, LinkedIn is a place where you want to showcase who you are and the value that you have to add. And one of the things I always tell my mentees or tell people in PAWEN is, ask yourself, when people visit my page, what do they see? That is the biggest thing, because there are some boards that they will ask you and they will go and search the birth certificate of your great-grandfather. Do you get? So, but the first thing that even decides whether they want to take that step is what they see online. So when I come to your page, what do I see? What does your page tell me? When I Google your name, which is something I always advise people to do, Google your name. It's not vanity, just Google your name. Because any board that you're going to be on, the first thing that they will do is to Google your name. Whether you like it or not, they will Google your name. So what they see is what they'll use to assess. So if you Google your name and you don't like what you see, just know that that's what any board who wants you on board will also see. And the question is, how do you want to change that? But you need to be deliberate about, when people come onto my page, what do they see? And as someone who's a LinkedIn queen, I always say, beyond what I see on your page, what is more important to me is the comments that you're putting up on other people's posts. And because anyone can build a LinkedIn page, I can use AI, especially in this day. I can use AI to come up with something very beautiful on my LinkedIn. What makes me decide whether I want to take a further step with you is the insight and the thought leadership that you're sharing in your posts, in your comments, and in the things that you repost and reshare. I'll take that again. What are you saying in your comments? What are you saying in your posts? What are you saying? Or because if you repost something, you're saying that I agree with it. You're saying that I support this opinion. You're saying that, yes, I'm putting my brand behind this. So those are the things I will check. And those are the things any board recruiter will check. And if they see anything funny, you may also just make an assumption of what actions they will take. So let's ensure that your digital footprints, you guard it, like as they say, with all diligence, because really, some people applied for this mentoring series, for instance, and they said, I don't have a LinkedIn program. I almost deleted them, that LinkedIn profile. And I'm almost like, excuse me, in this day and age, it's totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable for you to be aspiring, for you to even be a corporate leader and not have a LinkedIn profile. Even MPs and people in government are maintaining LinkedIn profiles. So, and you want to be in the tables that are making decisions. you need to have a LinkedIn profile. But beyond having a LinkedIn profile, is a LinkedIn profile that tells us who you are and the value that you add to any organization. I'm very passionate about LinkedIn, and I'm really, really passionate about ensuring that we use it to showcase the awesomeness of who you are. Now we're coming to the end, and I'm just going to take.
Can I just add to that
Yes,
comment,
please.
SKP? A couple of months ago, I got a strange call from someone, from a recruiter. And why did they call me? They said, we noticed that you are connected to this person. And this person says on LinkedIn, we know that you're connected to this person on LinkedIn, and the person says that he has this experience, that experience, that experience. Do you know this person to have done those things? How do you know this person? So they called me to validate the content on the LinkedIn page, but also to tell them my impression of the person's capacity to be in that role. And the person now got that role, is a board role on a global multinational organizations board. But that's to say, what she said. So also, in addition to what SKP has said, be very careful those that you also connect with on LinkedIn. And that was when I learned that I should be very careful with those that I connect with on LinkedIn, because when they go through your connections, they want to see if you have, a suicide bomber on your connections. For example, I use that word. If I'm incorrect, SKP, I'm sorry. That was
No. You're just giving me cause for reflection, and because I've always been okay. So the way I typically do is I accept everyone that connects with me. If you just show anything, I delete you immediately. Because many times I don't even have the time to start filtering through my connections. But this has given me a further cause for concern. I'm processing it mentally to say, okay, I didn't even know that this is done. And because anyone can really open up a LinkedIn page, I understand why this is done. So I'm still thinking in my head, okay, so does that mean going forward, I need to be careful who I accept, right? I didn't even know, but yeah. Thank you for sharing this.
SKP, please go on.
Okay, all right. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, so this will be like my last question. Okay, I see a comment. Let me take that comment first before. If you ask a question, okay, Olalade, one of our incredible facilitators, thank you. Oh, okay, Olalade, you too. Also, Olalade is saying that she's also gotten such calls on LinkedIn to verify people. Okay. Now that I know, I'll be very, very cautious. Okay, now to my final question before we close for the day. What would you say are 2 or 3 practical habits or routines that you have that has helped you consistently stay credible, visible, and valuable on the boards without necessarily burning out?
The first one is that I assign at least 30 hours per annum to be in a classroom, because I understand that I have to continue to learn. I always go to school. I'm sure a couple of my friends will say, where are you going to again this year? I always go to school. I make sure that I assign a couple of hours every year to be either in a physical classroom or online, but be in a place where I'm learning, I'm being taught stuff. The second is that so far I have only gone to boards where I have a passion for what they're doing, where I feel that there's a direct, connection between my passion and impact on that board. So that every day I go for the board meeting, no matter how I have to read one paper, one, maybe just for one presentation, I can have 100-slide presentation I have to read through and be ready for the board. Look, the board pack can be huge, but as long as there's my passion that's connected to impact that I want to create, I see it on that board. Every time I'm tired, I'm happy to continue because, I have a passion for that. And the third is that it's also a major source of learning for me. So every time I come to the board, because I'm not an expert in every area, I deliberately try to learn from the different situations and the different board colleagues that I have. And because I'm on different boards, I'm on board in Asia, that is an MFI. I'm on the board of a bank in Kenya. I'm on the board of a Fintech that is in Ghana, Uganda, Mauritius. So I'm constantly learning from those boards. And I find, for example, that the skill I learned in my board, on my board in Asia, is what I'm using on the board in Ghana. The skill I learned on a board in Kenya is what I'm using on the board, on the NGO board in Nigeria. So I use that also as a platform for learning, because I'm on the multi-geographic boards. So there's a lot of learning about culture, learning about people, learning about a lot of stuff, because they're all in financial services, but they're in different parts of financial services. So I'm learning. So those are the three things that keep me wanting to go back every time.
Thank you so much. Let me ask a follow-up question from Mercy, who's also one of our alumni from the OnBoardHer program. So she says, do you schedule this 30 hours on your calendar, or how do you ensure that you achieve these goals?
At the beginning of the year, my learning is two things. First, I learn because I have a gap, which means I would have done an audit and to say to myself, the future board members of financial services in 2027 or 2026, what would they require? And there's always research that will tell you what the future board members should look like, what is required on the boards of companies in the next 12 months, next 18 months, next 24 months. So you need to look at those kind of research to tell you what, and you check yourself, this research, where am I vis-a-vis this research? So that's the first one. I need to close a gap. So I'm always constantly looking, because the market is dynamic. The other is also that I think that I'm trying to achieve a bigger worldview. So I go to learn about the bigger worldview. Because if I want to be on the board of Apple, and I'm still learning at the level of a mid-sized bank in Nigeria, the distance is still very far. The distance for me is still very far. So while I learn to be better where I am, I also learn to position for where I want to be in the next 5 years. So if my goal is to be on the board of Google, on the board of Apple, because when you're on the board of Apple, for example, your remuneration on the board of Apple is more than the remuneration of some CEOs in banks. They pay you cash, they pay you with shares, they pay you with equity. I mean, you go on the board. Let me give you an example of this REM so that you understand why it's very important. On a tier 1 Nigerian bank, if you're on the board of a tier 1 Nigerian bank, somebody that I know just got on the board of a tier 2 Nigerian bank, and she got there as the chairman of one of the committees. She got a brand new Jeep as part of the package. She's paid in USD. She's paid as a board member. She's paid as the board, as the chairman of the board. She has almost, single digits in terms of interest rates on any financial services product she gets from that bank. I mean, so for them to take you on to that kind of board, you've got to check and say, what am I going to be paid? So if you look at that vis-a-vis an Apple board, you go to an Apple board, your REM every year is in millions of dollars. So if they're going to bring you on a board like that, where they pay you millions of dollars, you've got to be the one that can deliver the value they require. So I'm always checking those kind of things. I'm saying to myself, how can I position there? What do they need to function at that level? And I learn that as well. So at the beginning of the year, I do that exercise and then tell myself, what do I need this year? Some of them I would do have some, so I kind of look at those things and then look for the organizations that can give me that learning and then apply for those things. And over time, I'm able to do that. But I first do that mental intellectual exercise first of where I am, how can I be better, where I want to be in 5 years' time. And then I split it up. Where I am, I spend 60% of that 30 hours on that. Where I want to be, I spend 40% of that 30 hours on that. And I'm preparing myself for the future.
Fantastic. And talking about things, I think you shouldn't wait till the beginning of the year, right? You can start from now and ask yourself, I mean, we still have 5 months plus till the end of the year. What learning will I get, right? That would position me. By popular demand, we typically will do only one onboard her cohort in a year, but by popular demand, because the number of people we have on our waiting list is so much, we are running a second cohort, right, for this year. That will start right after the mentoring series. The application is not open yet, but by the next mentoring session, which we'll be having with Daniela Simao, that's another fantastic lady. She's the youngest woman to be on the board of the Central Bank of Angola, right? Very, very inspiring, very value-packed. You don't want to miss that session. You don't need to register again. I mean, if you've registered before, you already will get the joining link to that. But make up your mind from now to say, what learning will I join? And do I need to have in preparation for my board readiness program? The OnBoardHer Cohort 4 will take place this year. I'm happy to announce that a lot of people have been asking, and yes, we will do this in October. Readiness has also bullied me. She's my oga. She's a program manager, but at the beginning of every year, I always run a LinkedIn program, right? And I've done this, and it's free of charge. I've done this for the past 2 years. So if you're struggling with LinkedIn, just look out for it. Follow me on social media. LinkedIn is the place you get me. Instagram, I'm still deciding whether I need to delete that app or not. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll definitely, I would announce it maybe sometime in December, right? When it is open. It usually starts on the 2nd of January. 2nd of January, it's depending on how the spirit is moving me, whether it's 10 days or I used to do 30 days before, but I really typically don't have that time any longer. So this year I did 10 days. I think next year I'll probably do 10 days again. So if you need help with LinkedIn, and I mean, so it's a community. This year we're about 500 in that community that women, no, not only women. So we have women and men who join. So men join. Typically, I always do women, but this year I admitted some men before they say I'm anti-men, right? So look out for that. And so yes, who would like? I have a final question from Jackie before we take your closing
There's
remarks.
one before Jackie, I think.
Oh, okay. Let's take Jackie's on, then I'll go on to that question. So Jackie says, do you have a board mentor? Let me start by telling all of you that Toby is my board mentor. Let me declare it open now. She's my board mentor. I always grab her by the 2 legs anytime I have a question, and she has just been amazing. And you know why? That's why she had to be the first person, right? I mean, I have to bring my mentor first, right? But yes, Toby, please answer that question, and I'll take the other question.
Yes, I do have board mentors. Like I do in my life, I have board mentors for different areas of my board work. So when it comes to people and management and the board dynamics, I have someone I always talk to about, how do I manage this? When it comes to audits, technical stuff, because on the board, there are some technical things. For financial services, for example, regulatory board committees like audit and risk and compliance, I have people I speak to who are experts, who can tell me what to do, on a board as a board member or as an audit committee chairman. So yes, I do have board mentors, both formal and informal, and I speak to about different parts of my board work. And of course, then I have mentors who I speak to generally about getting on more boards or the sector I want to go to, stuff like that. So I have different people for different things.
Okay, so I see the question. It's from Mercy, and I believe that we've answered that question. So that's why I'm not taking it, which is how do you position for more boards? And we've dealt with that extensively in this conversation. If you want to add to that, that's okay. Before we then take your closing remarks.
I think the question I want to respond to is she said she tried to register on the board platform, but she couldn't because they asked her she had been on the board before. Yes, some of those platforms require that you are either an existing board member or you used to be on a board, but there are other platforms as well that do not require that. So you need to kind of find that out. If you're in Africa, I know that PAWEN is that network is fantastic for you. I know there's one called the Boardroom Africa. You don't have to be on the board before you can join that platform. So you need to look at those kind of platforms that accept first timers that are trying to get into board work. But I know that can be a problem because a lot of the established known platforms always require some experience in board work. And that is why you should just go to the school of your child and become on the board, because it's board work. Or the school of your religious, or the board of your religious organization. It's board work.
Or a non-profit organization.
Yeah, yes, or enough non-profit, yeah. And it doesn't matter the size. A board member is a board member, at least for the first time.
Yeah. I remember the session you had with us when you took us through that trajectory where you said start with your church or a nonprofit and then go on to startups and then, just. So if you've not watched it, I think Readiness must have sent that link to everyone. And the last session Mrs. Boshoro did with us, just listen to it. It will give a lot of insight, and better still, just sign up when the application opens. Typically, we do 30 people in a class. We would stop once we have 30 people because we can't take more than 30 people in a class. But there'll be another cohort next year. So if you don't get the 30 slots, you would always get another opportunity next year. Mrs. Bosch, closing remarks.
So my closing remark would be that I went through it and I found other leaders as well who think they don't have what it takes yet. And I want to say to you that you already have what it takes. You might need to reposition or package it, or even fully come to identify and recognize it, because some of us have to recognize what we have. I gave an example where I thought I didn't have experience in infrastructure until my mentor said to me, no, you already have experience. You have the most valuable experience. So there are a lot of things that we already have that we don't even know, or we are not able to identify or recognize that we already have. So when it comes to board work, people think I have to be A, B, C before I can go on the board. No, you have the required, at least the basic requirement to go on the board. And then you are on a platform like PAWEN where they are available to support you to get the right skill and the positioning that you require. In my faith, they say, as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. You're going to think right. Ladies, we've got to think right. That's the first step you've got to get. You've got to think right. I have value. I can do it. I have all that is required to be a valuable contributor on this board. So that needs to be done. And then, of course, look at where you are. What can I do better? What skill do I have? They're up to 50% of the skill. Yes, you can start. That's very important. And the last thing I'm going to say is that not a lot of young women or young professionals have this kind of guidance that PAWEN gives. I didn't have it, but thank God for the mentors that helped me at a particular stage in life. If I got this early, I'd probably be on the board of Apple by this time. So I would say that, please connect with such platforms. This platform will really help shorten the distance between where you're going to and where you are. And there are professional board members who earn in millions of dollars. Yes. And they work only at the end of the quarter. Let me leave you with that word about what is in it for you. There's passion in it, of course. There's impact, there's influence, fantastic. And that should be the first thing you consider. But the second thing is the remuneration. Some people earn in hundreds of thousands of dollars being on the board, and they only attend board meetings once a quarter. So they play golf from January to March, and then go to the board in March, and then back to golf playing again in April, May, and then June. Why can't you have that life? So you can. There's a lot in it that you can get from being on the board. So I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much. And I remember this was, honestly, and I like to say this publicly. She was one of the people who inspired my board journey, right? When I heard some of the amounts that my mates were earning on boards, it's incredible. And another thing I just want to add to that is that you're never too young to be on a board. In fact, I sit on some boards now, and I can tell you that many boards are particularly looking for young people on their boards, because young people bring a different way of thinking. There's almost no organization now that is not looking for, how can I attract more young people? How can I connect with young people? Young people think in a way that is totally different. So how does our board represent that diversity? So there are so many boards looking for young people. Do not count yourself out because of your age. Mrs. Bosch, thank you so much. You know I love you. Thank you, thank you. This has been, I mean, if you look at the comments, you'll see a lot of people have been saying this has been value packed, this has been inspiring. So a lot of Poloka says, how did 2 hours just go by so quickly? That's what happens when your brain is being rewired. Someone also said that the brain is being rewired. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The next session is on August the 20th, I believe. It will be in your calendars already, so just make sure that you make it a date with us. People have asked if there's a recording. Yes, if you go onto our YouTube page, just subscribe on our YouTube page, you will see this particular recording. We've made it public. Most of our videos are private, but this one we made it public so you can rewatch. Thank you, ladies, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
So much. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am.